Hello everyone, I'm Tibor Tauzin, and today I would like to talk about infants' expectations about the communicative transmission of social norms. So, we humans have a tendency to follow normative behavioral rules in groups. So, for instance, we know what we should do or what we are expected to do or forbidden to do in a church. And these social rules govern our actions in many situations. So these actions, in contrast to instrumental actions, are often context-specific, inefficient from a strictly instrumental point of view, and they are internalized too. So there are a lot of previous studies which actually show that through the observation of social actions, even infants can identify these behavioral rules, and older children can learn about these rules, and also they can follow these rules. But we know less about whether infants or children can understand and how they can understand that communication can also transmit norms. So in many situations, of course, we don't have to observe others to know what we should do. We can ask someone, or we are directed by someone. So our basic question was whether young infants can understand that norms can be communicated. And in these studies, we relied on previous studies that we had, previous results that we had. So in these previous studies, we used animated videos. And in these animated videos, we have two unfamiliar animated characters. We often call them flatfishes, so I will refer to them as flatfishes. And what we found in one of these studies that infants can recognize when communicative information transfer is happening based on the variability of signals that are exchanged. So the signals that are exchanged are variable, or the signal sequences, then infants can understand that they can transmit communicative information, in contrast to the situation when the signals are identical completely. So if you imagine a situation when two guys communicating with each other, and they are just repeating basically the same word, that one says hi and the other says hi, and this goes back and forth, you can understand why this cannot transmit communicative information. So importantly, in these studies that we conducted already, and also the one that I will present, we used non-speech sound signals. So infants can also understand this as an abstract cue of communication. In another study that we had, we found that infants can also infer that these variable signals can convey relevant information about the here and now, as opposed to the identical signals. So for instance, they can convey information about the current location of an object. So I will not show you the whole study, just the test phase. Basically, we had the two flatfishes. One of the flatfishes always hid an object, a ball, and this flatfish wanted in one of two containers or two boxes, and this flatfish always wanted to approach the box with the ball in it. And in the test phase, what we shown to the babies was this. So the agent entered the scene, hid the object in one of the containers. Then this object jumped into the other box. So when the entity appeared again, it had a false belief about the location of the object. However, it could exchange variable communicative signals with the other one. We had two different outcomes. So the entity either approached the box with the ball in it or the empty one. And what we found was that infants expect that through the variable signals, the yellow agent can transmit this relevant information to the blue agent, so they were surprised when the blue agent approached the empty box. However, in contrast to that, when the two entities exchanged identical signals, they had the opposite expectation. So we use this type of stimuli in the current study, and what we were curious about is whether young infants can infer that behavioral norms can be also communicatively transmitted. So more broadly, whether they can understand that non-episodic information can be conveyed by communicative signals. And we also wanted to check whether infants can infer that non-communicative interactions do not enable the transfer of these norms. So more specifically, whether they can understand that if the signals are identical, they not allow the transmission of the norm, or if there is no turn-taking exchange of signals. So in this study, we tested 13-month-old infants, and we finished two groups. And the third one is an ongoing study. We used the same or similar animated videos with the novel agents, with these flatfishes. They again exchanged non-speech melodic tones. And we had three phases in these experiments. We had part 1 and part 2 of the learning phase, and we had a test phase. What we measured was the cumulative looking time of infants. In the first experiment, the entities exchanged identical signals, though not in the first part of the learning phase, because in the first part of the learning phase, what we wanted to show is that, that the main protagonist can exhibit an efficient goal approach. So we know from previous studies that instrumental actions are expected to be efficient, so agents must follow a straight trajectory. I mean, infants expect that agents must follow a straight trajectory when there is no obstacle between them and the target object. So this is what the video was or the trials in this phase. So the entity simply approached a target object and used an efficient trajectory. In the subsequent learning phase, or the second part of the learning phase, what is relevant is that the target object appeared in a building-like structure, so the context was now different. So we wanted to somehow represent that what is happening inside is somehow context-specific. First, I will show you the video, and then I will explain the rationale behind it. So basically what we showed here is that the entity tries to approach this target object. It uses an efficient trajectory, but then there is an intervention, and it exchanges signals with the other one. And of course, these were variable signals, and after that, the entity is using an inefficient approach in this building to, trajectory to approach this target object. Okay, so basically what we wanted to show that the main protagonist first follows an efficient trajectory, then there is an intervention by the other agent to show that the non-normative action are stopped, and then there is a turn-taking exchange of variable signals to show that there is a communicative information transfer, and then after that an inefficient approach of this goal object. And in the test phase, what is relevant that the target was again in this building-like structure, and no other agent was present to supervise what was going on, to test the expectations about the internalization of a behavioral rule. We had two different trials. We had an inefficient approach trial and an efficient approach trial in an ABBA order, contrabalanced across infants. So this is how the inefficient trial looked like. It's basically just the same as what you saw before without the first part. And we also had an efficient approach. So at this time, the agent uses a straight trajectory to approach this object. Okay, so we hypothesized that if infants can understand that communicative signals allow transfer of information, they may infer also that the agent can learn the norm or this new behavioral rule. So infants should expect an inefficient goal approach in this situation. And actually, this is what we found. So we measured looking time data, the looking time of infants, and we log transformed it. We found a significant difference between the efficient and inefficient condition. So infants were surprised by the efficient goal approach in contrast to their default expectation, because what I was talking about before, which suggests that infants understood the communicative transmission of the norm. Or maybe not, so the question is whether infants indeed can understand that communication played an important role here. So the main protagonist maybe just continue to do what the main protagonist did before in the learning phase. So to test this alternative, we had another experiment in which the two entities exchanged identical signal sequences. So experiment 1 and experiment 2 were the same, except again that the agents exchanged these identical signal sequences in the second part of the learning phase. So this is how video looked like in this phase. So the beginning of the video is the same. These are the identical signals, and then the ending of the video is again the same, so there is an inefficient goal approach. I will just stop it here. So we hypothesized that if infants can understand that non-communicative signals do not allow the transmission of information, the agent cannot really learn the norm, so infants should expect an efficient goal approach. And indeed, this is what we found. So we found a significant difference between the efficient and inefficient approach, but at this time in the other direction. So infants were surprised by the inefficient goal approach, in line with their default expectation. So it seems that they could understand that in the lack of communication, behavioral rules cannot be conveyed. But of course, there is an alternative low-level explanation for this. So one could say that, okay, due to the saliency of variable signals, infants may be paid more attention in experiment 1 than in experiment 2. In the second part of the learning phase, so they encoded the inefficient approach of the target object better. So to test this alternative, we started to conduct experiment 3. It's an ongoing study again. Experiment 1 and experiment 3 is the same, except that in the second part of the learning phase, the main protagonist produces the variable signals alone. So there is no turn taking. I will show you the video. The ending of the video is again the same. So according to this low-level hypothesis, one should say that due to the saliency of variable signals, infants should pay more attention to the inefficient goal approach in this phase, and then therefore they should expect an inefficient goal approach in the test phase too. But actually we found no difference between the efficient and inefficient goal approach. Again, I would like to emphasize that this is an ongoing study. We have 21 infants in the group and we need 30. It seems that infants do not expect an inefficient goal approach. So one could say that maybe saliency of variable signals might not account for infants' responses in experiment 1. So to sum up, we tested whether infants can understand that norms can be taught via communicative interactions, and we found that 13-month-olds can infer that communicative signals in a turn-taking contingent exchange can convey information about behavioral rules and expect that these norms are internalized by other agents. So in short, infants seem to understand that the communicative transmission of norms is possible, which may allow them to identify and perhaps to learn about these behavioral rules from early on. And by that, I would like to finish my presentation. If you are interested in more Flatfish news, please visit our posters today or tomorrow. If you are not interested in what the flatfishes are doing in academia, but you might be interested what are they doing outside academia, I recommend you to watch this movie. They will appear there just for 5 or 10 seconds. But if you don't like the flatfishes, I still recommend the movie because it's about an infant neuroscientist, so it's an interesting one. And I would like to say thank you for all of you.